Welcome to the Let Go and Be Free podcast, a podcast for those who grew up in an alcoholic or dysfunctional family. I'm your host, Ron Vital, author of the Let Go and Be Free 100 Daily Reflections for Adult Children of Alcoholics series. If you'd like to learn more, feel free to visit letgoandbefree.com. And with that, let's get on with the show. And welcome to the show. For this week's episode, I want to continue going through and discussing the 12 steps of adult children of alcoholics. We are going to go through step 6 right now, and I'm going to break this one down similarly as I did with the others. I know that there could be some challenges related to how this kind of plays out in the sense of whether, again, you believe in God or not. I don't want to have that discussion here. I think that's a personal decision. Either you do or you do not, or you're not sure. And I think that there's a lot of value that can be taken from the 12 steps, even if you don't believe in God. And I'm going to, kind of stress on that I really think that the tools that we're learning from the 12 steps are extremely helpful, no matter if you believe in any particular God or not. I don't think that's the strength of these steps. So to kind of start off with, how about we start with, let me read step 6. So step 6 is, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. And I know right there, some people are like, whoa, wait a minute. I don't want to, to focus on God. And, I don't believe that God's going to save me. And I hear you. I do. So imagine if we were to reread the step, and step 6 is, we're entirely ready to have all these defects of character removed. Like, remove all these defects of character. So it's something that internally there is some self-reflection, something in which, instead of blaming others, focusing on, this is what happened to me when I was a kid. It was their fault. It was this person's fault. If this person didn't drink or didn't do drugs or didn't hit me or didn't this or didn't that, there might be some of you that have focused on that path. And I understand where you're coming from. For the longest time, I was in the same, boat where I just kept thinking back like, oh, I'm never going to have a father that, played ball with me, and he didn't teach me how to ride a bike, and he wasn't there for me, XYZ milestone, and that was, I'll be honest, that was really difficult for me to kind of come to terms with. I think I would, I'm remembering times where I would reflect back and just realize that I just was never going to have that, with my father. And to think of that really did cause me a lot of pain, a lot of hurt, where I just was like, I just wanted some of the basic things, that some people take for granted. Someone that would be there for you to toss a ball and hear you talk about your day at school, or, to teach you about how he met my mom and how he was in a relationship with her, and what he did in dating, and just sharing stories. None of that happened. And I just felt like, again, I had this blank book of like who I needed to become. I knew that I needed to mature, I needed to grow, but I had no clue how to do it, where to go to figure this all out. I just felt lost, to be honest. And so for a lot of my early years, I just put a lot of anger and hate toward, my father. Like, it's his fault. He was bad. He did XYZ, which is true. But that doesn't necessarily mean, one, it was the full story, and two, no matter how much energy I spent on the past and hating him, that was never going to, quote unquote, fix me or strengthen me to become the person that I needed to be if I wanted to be, a good husband, a good friend, a good coworker, a good father myself. So when I look at step 6, again, step 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. If we take the word God out, if we think about if we ourselves were ready to have our defects of character removed. And I I'm can hear some of you like probably screaming back at the podcast wherever you're listening from. Well, I'm not broken, and I'm not saying that you are broken. I'm not saying that all of us carry these baggage weights with us, but I think it is fair to say that we do have, again, in the terms of adult children of alcoholics, defects of character. For me, that would be how I communicate to other people under stress. When I'm, feeling being put upon and feel like the world is coming at me. Do I withdraw? Do I fight back? Do I lash out? What are these defects of character that I've learned from seeing dysfunctional behavior modeled time and time and again when I was a kid growing up and in my teenage years? What did I see? In my own family, there was lots of yelling and lots of screaming. And I mentioned this before: yelling, fighting in the sense of arguing, screaming, and then 10 minutes after the argument, the sides would cool again, and then later in the day, you'd have to pretend that nothing ever really happened again and everything went back to normal. Nothing was ever solved, but it was like trying to think of the right analogy. The balloon was gathering all the stress and was growing big and big and big, and it would explode, and then everything would go back to normal again. That's just how my, childhood was, and growing up. So the defects of character that I personally have had to deal with is learning, what are the rules of arguing? What are the best ways of communicating? How do you really listen to someone instead of trying to, quote unquote, win a fight, win an argument? How do I learn these things if I wasn't learning them from the modeling that I saw in the dysfunctional behaviors within my, family? With step 6, it's basically saying, what if I do this self-reflection? And if I look at things from a different perspective, what if I'm willing to change? What if? That's a very powerful phrase, what if. It creates possibility. As, the opposition of that is you're stuck the way you've always been. You're always going to be a certain way. If you believe that there's no chance for growth or for change, then that's a really heavy burden to carry through the course of life. That's something where, you're just going to be defined by your past and not have the possibility of either reinventing yourself, learning new things, or exploring your own personality and coming to terms with your past to find healing and becoming whole. That's something that I think is extremely important. We've talked about the various paths for this. Some people do therapy, the adult children of alcoholics meetings, self-help books, writing in journals, meditation, visualization techniques. Some people do all those things. Some people do yoga, Pilates, all kinds of stuff. There are many ways, many paths to get to that, future state where you can say, I'm learning new skills. I'm, for lack of a better phrase, reprogramming your neural pathways. So that way the habits, those defects of character habits that you've learned, you have to basically learn new ones. And you got to role play in the sense of practice those out and learn them over time. If you're in an argument with someone, and let's say, a simple example, I think this is a pretty common one that many people can identify with. You're married and you and your spouse argue about something. It could be something that you argue about the same thing again and again and again, and nothing ever gets resolved. The question is, what could be different in the future? Are you really listening, or are you just trying to tell somebody what your own opinion is and how you're right and they're wrong? Are you willing to compromise? Are you willing to try new communication, interpersonal communication skills? Are you willing to work with somebody, in therapy? There's lots of different paths that you can get to have that healthier, more functional communication with, let's say, your spouse. And again, just using an example. This could be anything. Could be with a family member, could be with, a coworker or a boss. It doesn't really matter. Just using a simple example. In this step, it's what are we accountable for? Talked about boundaries many other times through reviewing these 12 steps. If you think about the boundary, we're entirely ready to have our defects of character removed. The things that we own, that we are responsible for, that we are accountable for. That boundary line, we, us, not them, their problems, their issues. We know that. This step is basically drawing the line of what can you improve in yourself? It doesn't say, you're broken and you're ruined, and these are these things that you got to do to fix yourself. It's how do you remove and unlearn some of these dysfunctional defects of character? What if you're always gossiping, or you're lying, or you're cheating, or you're whatever those defects are? How can you learn a different path? So I want to be very clear that defects of character, I don't see that as meaning something's not right with you or something's broken within you. It's that defects of character, you're choosing to do something that isn't helpful for you. What if you were to choose a different path, learn different skills? What if you were to let some of that past go, see what that boundary is of what you are responsible for, what you're not responsible for, and you focused and reflected on that? So if you can embrace all of who you are, like the fullness of why you're here in our existence, not just the smiley face that you want people to see, but what if you embrace the parts where you feel sad and lonely, 2:00 in the morning when you wake up from a bad dream? What if, the hurt you feel when somebody says something to you and you're too, timid or shy to say anything back? Or when you lash out at people and you get angry. Let's say you get angry at your spouse, but you're really angry at your work. You've deflected and changed the energy coming in. Maybe energy is the wrong word, but someone's treated you badly at work and you swallow it because you don't want to get fired and you don't know how, in a constructive way, to communicate that what they've done is not fair to you. So you get home and let's say your spouse says something and just sets you off and you just lash out at them. That's, a defective character in that you've learned to repress in certain ways and then redirect and share energy, in the wrong person. You've basically let your emotion out at the wrong person that you're not really angry at. I have done that, myself, and that's something that I've learned of, like, am I really angry at this person because of X, Y, or Z? Or am I resentful because of blah, 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 fill in the blank? That's something that when we can take that time to question ourselves and to really think it through and realize that it's not easy to admit some of these things about ourselves, these defects of character. These are traits that maybe are really ingrained within us. We may have learned them when we were kids because they were survival mechanisms that helped us get through difficult times. But then as we matured, became older, it doesn't really serve us anymore. So the question is, do you want to continue to repeat those patterns and have unhappy results? Or are you willing to have these things removed from you? This step is basically the self-reflection part of you've gone through, you've done the moral inventory. You're now open to the possibility of, what if these things could change? What if that could happen? What would that mean for me? What would that really do for me in my life? And I think, many times people don't go around and talk about what they really feel, especially in American society these days. How you doing? Feel great. And I remember, and a part of me, if I've shared the story on a previous podcast, there was a coworker of mine. She was from overseas, and I asked her, how are you doing? And she replied, really having a difficult time, this or that. And I listened. And she was surprised because she said to me, she's like, most people in America, when they ask you that, they want the pat answer. I'm doing great. I'm doing fine. Good. It's almost like a greeting, like good morning, where, good evening. How are you doing? Great. Fine. Good. Wonderful. Superb. Not, I had a really difficult night last night. It was difficult. I had some challenges on the home front. And then the other person goes, oh, you know, anything you want to talk about? Yeah. And then you have a real conversation. That doesn't typically happen most of the times, unless it's your close friend. In America, it's often, how you doing? Great. Wonderful. And then you move on to whatever the next topic of conversation is. And I think that's funny in the sense of often we are afraid or uncomfortable sharing our real emotions. And I believe that when you find really good friends, and let's say your spouse or within your family, people that you can trust, and I should stop for a moment. When I say family, it could be your found family, if your family are struggling with addiction and other issues, you may not be able to have these really close, intimate, and open conversations with them. But your found family, who are they? Your friends? Is it someone in your church group or someone in a book club or, childhood friend that you've stayed close with all these years? Who is that person? Is it your spouse? Is it not your spouse? I do think it's important that we look around at our relationships and we see what level of comfort we have with various people. It also allows us to look at our defects of character and go, I didn't treat this person really, nice. I did X, Y, and Z. How do I deal with stress at work? How do I deal with, this problem or that problem? How do I work that out with people? That, those interactions, those daily interactions, I think are really important for us to reflect on. And then we have to be honest with ourselves. I mean, like, are we ready? Are we truly ready to have these defects of character removed? What is that really going to entail? We'll talk about that, in future steps. But for right now, when we look at how we've been hurt and we can incorporate that pain and the hurt and all the things that we've dealt with in our experiences, and we can own those things, and we can say, this is all of who I am. All those horrible things that happened to me, or frankly, some of them still may be happening till today. That's part of who you are. What about the other parts? What about the full you? The you that yearns for hope, goodness, light, whatever your goals are, whatever your definition of happy life, will be. It's not just, oh, woe is me. I have all these defects of character. Here's all the things that are wrong with me. I'm broken. Nobody wants me. Nobody loves me. This step is basically saying, let's put a boundary line down. First off, whatever anybody else, whatever their baggage is, that's theirs. Keep that out on the outside. What are your defects of character, and are you ready to have them removed? Meaning, are you ready to grow beyond who you are now, right now, and who you think you are, and become someone different? That's the beauty of life, is that we're not stones that just fall to the ground and we're stuck like, there's a stone. That's stone's going to be what the stone's going to be until water or the elements or something change it over time. And that will happen, but it takes millions of years. With us, we have the opportunity to grow each day, each hour, each minute, each second. And we have the ability to think of that, to actually think about our existence and the words that we use and how we think of ourselves. If we're always thinking, against ourselves, putting ourselves down, is that really going to help us in the long run? Is it really going to help us, grow from what we grew up with when we were young to become people that are full, able to embrace the goodness of everything we are, the good, the bad, the ugly, whatever you want to call it. the mix of we're imperfect people and that is perfect. I know that sounds like an oxymoron, but I kind of really like that. We don't go around as perfect people. Nothing's ever wrong. We have nothing ever to learn from, nothing to grow from. You know, we're messy, we make mistakes. But it's like, what do we do with those mistakes? How do we learn from those? How do we become better people? How do we emulate the behavior that we see in others so that way we can learn and then say, you know, I do want to do something different this time. Instead of me always arguing a certain way and lashing out, maybe I can do X, Y, and Z. I can listen and then I can say, you know what? I'm getting really angry right now. I need to step away for 15 minutes. Let's regroup later today. Again, just using an example. So when we think about this step 6, I think it's important that, again, you can take the word God and just remove it from this. I think it's more important to focus on, obviously, what the defects of character are, being honest with ourselves, and not catastrophizing that, like thinking, oh God, everything is so horrible and it's the end of the world, or always thinking like, here are all these things that are wrong with me. But again, finding the balance between saying, yeah, you know what, I'll be honest, these are things that don't really serve me well in my relationships with others. I'd really like to learn a better way, and I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to let some of those old behavior patterns go because they're dysfunctional and they don't help me. But I don't quite know where to go for the next step or how to get there. That's, to me, what the power, of this step is. It's focusing on who we are, all of who we are, accepting that, and then saying, I'm ready to kind of grow past whatever happened to you, in your dysfunctional family. Whatever that, was it addiction? Was it violence? Was it whatever? All of us have our own unique stories. There are threads, and this is what I always thought was amazing. When you go to an adult children of alcoholics meeting and you hear the stories that other people are sharing, the people, places, and situations might be different, but the themes are pretty consistent, where you can identify with something that somebody else has gone through and be like, yeah, I've been there, or I felt that, or I can know, I can walk that. Like, I've been in that person's shoes, so I understand what they're going through right now. I may not fully understand the whole thing, but I can have empathy. I can really get that. And the power in those meetings of having the freedom to say what you want, and in my opinion, no crosstalk. Nobody talks back at you. You can just say, this is what's on my mind. I'm struggling with X, Y, Z. This is it. Thank you for sharing, letting me share. And then the next person goes on. That freedom for you to take the welled up emotions within you, find a way to communicate in an effective manner what you're feeling, and processing that is a step toward healing and moving in the right direction. There's no magic here. And that's why I do like to focus on, the word God, and take God out, put God off to the side. I say that for a reason. It's really us coming to terms with our own feelings, our emotions, what we live through, and processing that and consciously saying, I'm going to move forward and beyond that. I'm willing to learn something new. I'm willing to try. I'm willing to become a new person. I'm not going to forget all of who I am, but I'm going to grow. And if we're honest with ourselves, like if we really are honest at a biological level, we have cells dying in us all the time, and we have new cells growing. Like, we are constantly, every day, different. We are not the same. And, and that's on a biological level. We're older. Everything is different. Everything's changing within us. There are certain standards that make us us, but look at yourself from a picture of when you were 5 and look at yourself now. You might see the similarities there, but you are literally a different person. You've grown, and You have hair, you don't have hair, it could be gray, it could be chain, whatever. You're a different person. I like to focus on the fact that it's the same thing when it comes to our personalities. We can grow and learn and evolve. We don't have to say, wow, I'm always going to do X, Y, and Z all the time. I can never change. Like, I don't believe that. And I hope that you don't either. Change is good, though scary and difficult and hard at times. So with this step, I really wanted to focus on that ground level of understanding who you are, reflecting on yourself, and embracing the defects of character and, let's say, the positive sides of your character, the wholeness of all of you, all of that you have to offer. Embrace all of that so you can then say, I am ready to let the things that are holding me back go. Like, think about that. Think about if you were to say, I'm willing to let go of the things that are holding me back. Like, the power that comes in that. It's the words get made into power, because then your actions can get organized around those. And you might say, oh, I'm going to start going to therapy. I'm going to start doing daily journals, and then when you fall, and let's say you have some issues, a big argument, let's say with a parent that is still struggling with alcoholism, you come out of that and feel a wreck, and you're a mess, and you're like, oh my God. You have then tools and skills then to be able to say, what am I going to do? Am I going to follow the behavior pattern that I normally do? Or am I going to try something different this time? And what is that? Go to therapy, talk with a trusted friend, write your feelings out. Don't lash out at like the other person, like somebody else in your life, even though you're really angry at the parent that's struggling with addiction. Like, you can play this all out in your mind. And then as you live through these things, you have different options. There's opportunity, there's growth, there's healing, there's love. So I wanted to, just go through this. I know the steps it could be really challenging. Some of them can be off-putting. Wanted to break these down in something that's a little bit more friendly, something that would make life easier for you, instead of saying, I don't know where to go, I don't know what to do, I'm just looking for some help. Again, I found the 12 steps to be really helpful for me, because I can break them apart and I can chunk out the work over time, and then I can figure out, how do I want to move forward? Sometimes I've gone through therapy. Sometimes I've gone through ACOI meetings. Sometimes it's meditation or visualization or yoga, or I go running, or I read self-help books. I write in my journal. Like, I have built up different skills and a web of support, like a support network that will help me in my difficult times. That's what we're really learning here, is how to process what we're feeling in a positive, healthy way, instead of emulating dysfunctional behaviors that we saw and as kids and still might see in our families today. How do we choose a new path? And how are we comfortable with that? And what do we do to get from point A to point B to C, and to wherever our journey takes us? So again, I hope that you have found this episode helpful. I know that when I get to talk through the various steps, it really does help me kind of look at things from a different perspective and be like, wow, I've been looking in these 12 steps for decades now, and I hadn't thought of that before. So it gives me an opportunity to also do some self-reflection and to grow. So I thank you for listening, and I hope that you found this helpful. If you would like to learn more, you can visit letgoandbefree.com. And I ask a simple ask for listeners for this week. Wherever you listen to the podcast, if you can please visit and then like the podcast, so that more people, can find this podcast and we can help spread the word of others who are also looking for help. If you're willing to write a quick, short, positive review on whatever iTunes or, Google or Amazon or Spotify or, wherever you're listening to this, please, I would ask that you can leave a positive review or whatever, 4 stars or whatever the rating system is for wherever you listen. I would sincerely appreciate that. So thank you so much. And as always, I hope that you have a great week and that you have some time to have some downtime and some fun. Be well.